the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Vana Parva. Section 36, Arjun Vigamna Parva continued. Vasampayana said, hearing those words of Bhima, Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, that tiger among men and slayer of all foes, began to sigh heavily, and reflect in silence, and he thought within himself, I have heard recited the duties of kings, also all truths about the duties of the different orders. He is said to observe those duties truly who keep at them before his eyes, so as to regulate his conduct both in the present and the future. Knowing as I do the true course of virtue, which, however, is so very difficult of being known, how can I forcibly grind virtue down like grinding the mountains of Meru? Having reflected so for a moment, and settled what he should do, he replied unto Bhima as follows, without allowing him another word. O thou of mighty arms, it is even so as thou hast said. But, thou foremost of speakers, listen now to another word I say. Whatever sinful deeds, O Bhima, one seeketh to achieve, depending on his courage alone, become always a source of pain. But, thou of mighty arms, whatever is begun with deliberation, with well-directed prowess, with all appliances, and much previous thought, is seen to succeed. The gods themselves favor such designs. Hear from me something about what, proud of thy might, O Bhima, and led away by thy restlessness, thou thinkest should be immediately begun. Burisravas, Sala, the mighty Jalasandha, Bhishma, Drona, Karna, the mighty son of Drona, Dhritarashtra's sons Duryodhan and others so difficult of being vanquished, are all accomplished in arms and ever ready for battle with us. Those kings and chiefs of the earth also who have been injured by us, have all adopted the side of the Kauravas, and are bound by ties of affection to them. Bharata, they are engaged in seeking the good of Duryodhan and not of us. With full treasures and aided by large forces, they will certainly strive their best in battle. All the officers also of the Kuru army together with their sons and relatives, have been honored by Duryodhan with wealth and luxuries. Those heroes are also much regarded by Duryodhan. This is my certain conclusion that they will sacrifice their lives for Duryodhan in battle. Although the behavior of Bhishma, Drona, and the illustrious Kripa, is the same towards us as towards them, yet, thou of mighty arms, this is my certain conclusion that in order to pay off the royal favors they enjoy, they will throw their very lives, than which there is nothing dearer, in battle. All of them are masters of celestial weapons, and devoted to the practice of virtue. I think they are incapable of being vanquished even by gods led by Yasava himself. There is again amongst them that mighty warrior Karna, impetuous, and ever wrathful, master of all weapons, and invincible, and encased in impenetrable mail. Without first vanquishing in battle all those foremost of men, unaided as thou art, how canst thou slay Duryodhan? O Vrikodra, I cannot sleep thinking of the lightness of hand of that Sutha's son, who I regard is the foremost of all wielders of the bow. Vasampayana continued, hearing these words of Yudhishthira, the impetuous Bhima became alarmed, and forbore from speaking anything. And while the sons of Pandu were thus conversing with each other, there came to that spot the great ascetic Vyasa, the son of Satyavati. And as he came, the sons of Pandu worshipped him duly. Then that foremost of all speakers, addressing Yudhishthira, said, O Yudhishthira, O thou of mighty arms, knowing by spiritual insight what is passing in thy heart. I have come to thee, thou bull among men. The fear that is in thy heart, arising from Bhishma, and Drona, and Kripa, and Karna, and Drona's son, and Prince Duryodhan, and Dasasana, I will dispel, slayer of all foes, by means of an act enjoined by the ordinance. Hearing it from me, accomplish it thou with patience, and having accomplished it, king, quell this fever of thine soon. That foremost of speakers then, the son of Parashara, taking Yudhishthira to a corner, began to address him in words of deep import, saying, O best of the Bharatas, the time is come for thy prosperity, when, indeed Dhananjaya that son of Pritha will slay all thy foes in battle. Uttered by me and like unto success personified, accept from me this knowledge called Pratisamriti that I impart to thee, knowing thou art capable of receiving it. Receiving it from thee, Arjuna will be able to accomplish his desire. And let Arjuna, O son of Pandu, go unto Mahendra and Rudra, and Varuna, and Kuvara, and Yam, for receiving weapons from them. He is competent to behold the gods for his asceticism and prowess. He is even a rishi of great energy, the friend of Narayana, ancient, eternal, a god himself, invincible, ever successful, and knowing no deterioration. Of mighty arms, he will achieve mighty deeds, having obtained weapons from Indra, and Rudra, and the Lokpalas. And, son of Kunti, think also of going from this to some other forest that may, O king, be fit for thy abode. To reside in one place for any length of time is scarcely pleasant. In thy case, it might also be productive of anxiety to the ascetics. And as thou maintainest numerous Brahmanas versed in the Vedas and the several branches thereof, continued residence here might exhaust the deer of this forest, and be destructive of the creepers and plants. Vasampayana continued, having addressed him thus, that illustrious and exalted ascetic Vyasa, of great wisdom, acquainted with the mysteries of the world, then imparted unto the willing Yudhishthira the just, who had meanwhile purified himself, that foremost of sciences. And bidding farewell unto the son of Kunti, Vyasa disappeared then and there. The virtuous and intelligent Yudhishthira, however, having obtained that knowledge carefully retained it in his mind and always recited it on proper occasion. Glad of the advice given him by Vyasa, the son of Kunti then, leaving the wood Dvatavna went to the forest of Kamyak on the banks of the Saraswati. And, king, numerous Brahmanas of ascetic merit and versed in the science of orthopy and orthography, followed him like the rishis following the chief of the celestials. Arrived at Kamyak, those illustrious bulls amongst the Bharata took up their residence there along with their friends and attendants. And possessed of energy, those heroes, O king, lived there for some time, devoted to the exercise of the bow and hearing all the while the chanting of the Vedas. And they went about those woods every day in search of deer, armed with pure arrows. And they duly performed all the rites in honor of the Pitris, the celestials and the Brahmanas. Thus ends the 36th section in the Arjun Vigamna Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 37, Arjun Vigamna Parva continued. Vasampayana said, after some time, Yudhishthira the just, remembering the command of the Muni, Vyasa, and calling unto himself that bull among men Arjuna possessed of great wisdom, addressed him in private. Taking hold of Arjuna's hands, with a smiling face and in gentle accents, that chastiser of foes the virtuous Yudhishthira apparently after reflecting for a moment, spake these words in private unto Dhananjaya, O Bharata, The whole science of arms dwelleth in Bhishma, and Drona, and Kripa, and Karna, and Drona's son. They fully know all sorts of Brahma and celestial and human and Vayavya weapons, together with the modes of using and warding them off. All of them are conciliated and honored and gratified by Dhritarashtra's son, who behaveth unto them as one should behave unto his preceptor. Towards all his warriors Dhritarashtra's son behaveth with great affection, and all the chiefs honored and gratified by him, seek his good in return. Thus honored by him, they will not fail to put forth their might. The whole earth, besides, is now under Duryodhana's sway, with all the villages and towns, O son of Pritha, and all the seas and woods and mines. Thou alone art our sole refuge. On thee resteth a great burden. I shall, therefore, chastiser of all foes, tell thee what thou art to do now. I have obtained a science from Krishna-Dwaipayana. Used by thee, that science will expose the whole universe to thee. O child, attentively receive thou that science from me, and in due time, by its aid, attain thou the grace of the celestials. And, O bull of the Bharata race, devote thyself to fierce asceticism. Armed with the bow and sword, and cased in mail, betake thyself to austerities and good vows, and go down northwards, child, without giving way to anybody. O Dhananjaya, all celestial weapons are with Indra. The celestials, from fear of Vritra, imparted at the time all their might to Sakra. Gathered together in one place, thou wilt obtain all weapons. Go thou unto Sakra, he will give thee all his weapons. Taking the bow set thou out this very day in order to behold Purandara. Vasampayana continued, having said this, the exalted Yudhishthira the just, imparted that science unto Arjuna. And the elder brother, having communicated with due rites the knowledge unto his heroic brother, with speech and body and mind under perfect control, commanded him to depart. And at the command of Yudhishthira, the strong-armed Arjuna, taking up the Gandiva as also his inexhaustible quivers, and accoutred in mail and gauntlets and finger protectors made of the skin of the guana, and having poured oblations into the fire and made the Brahmanas to utter benedictions after gifts, set out from Kamyak with the objects of beholding Indra. And armed with the bow, the hero, at the time of setting out heaved a sigh and cast a look upwards for achieving the death of Dhritarashtra's sons. And beholding Kunti's son thus armed and about to set out, the Brahmanas and Siddhas and invisible spirits addressed him, saying, O son of Kunti, obtain thou soon what thou wishest. And the Brahmanas, also uttering benedictions, said, Achieve thou the object thou hast in view. Let victory be truly thine. And beholding the heroic Arjuna, of thighs stout as the trunks of the Sala, about to set out taking away with him the hearts of all, Krishna addressed him saying, O thou strong-armed one, let all that Kunti had desired at thy birth, and let all that thou desirest, be accomplished Dhananjaya. Let no one amongst us be ever again born in the order of Kshatriyas. I always bow down unto the Brahmanas whose mode of living is mendicancy. This is my great grief that the wretch Duryodhana beholding me in the assembly of princes mockingly called me a cow. Besides this he told me in the midst of that assembly many other hard things. But the grief I experience at parting with thee is far greater than any I felt at those insults. Certainly, in thy absence, thy brothers will while away their waking hours in repeatedly talking of thy heroic deeds. If, however, O son of Pritha, thou stayest away for any length of time, we shall derive no pleasure from our enjoyments or from wealth. Nay, life itself will be distasteful to us. O son of Pritha, our weal and woe, life and death, our kingdom and prosperity, are all dependent on thee. Bharata, bless thee, let success be thine. O sinless one, thy present task thou wilt be able to achieve even against powerful enemies. Thou of great strength, go thou to win success with speed. Let dangers be not thine. I bow to Dhatri and Vidatri. I bless thee. Let prosperity be thine. And, O Dhananjaya, let Hri, Shri, Kirti, Dhriti, Pushti, Uma, Lakshmi, Saraswati all protect thee on thy way, for thou ever worshippest thy elder brother and ever obeyest his commands. And, O bull of the Bharata race, I bow to the Vasis, the Rudras and Adityas, the Mangyutas, the Viswadevas, and the Sadhyas, for procuring thy welfare. And, O Bharata, be thou safe from all spirits of mischief belonging to the sky, the earth, and the heaven, and from such other spirits generally. Vasampayana continued, Krishna, the daughter of Yajnasena, having uttered these benedictions, ceased. The strong-armed son of Pandu then, having walked round his brothers and round Dharmya also, and taking up his handsome bow, set out. And all creatures began to leave the way that Arjuna of great energy and prowess, urged by the desire of beholding Indra, took. And that slayer of foes passed over many mountains inhabited by ascetics, and then reached the sacred Himamvat, the resort of the celestials. And the high-souled one reached the sacred mountain in one day, for like the winds he was gifted with the speed of the mind, in consequence of his ascetic austerities. And having crossed the Himamvat, as also the Gandhamdana, he passed over many uneven and dangerous spots, walking night and day without fatigue. And having reached Indrakila, Dhananjaya stopped for a moment. And then he heard a voice in the skies, saying, Stop. And hearing that voice, the son of Pandu cast his glances all around. And Arjuna, capable of using his left hand with skill equal to that of his right hand, then beheld before him an ascetic under the shade of a tree, blazing with Brahma brilliancy, of a tawny color, with matted locks, and thin. And the mighty ascetic, beholding Arjuna stop at that place, addressed him, saying, Who art thou, O child, arrived hither with bow and arrows, and cased in mail and accoutred in scabbard and gauntlet, and evidently wedded to the customs of the Kshatriya? There is no need of weapons here. This is the abode of peaceful Brahmanas devoted to ascetic austerities without anger or joy. There is no use for the bow here, for there is no dispute in this place of any kind. Therefore throw away, child, this bow of thine. Thou hast obtained a pure state of life by coming here. O hero, there is no man who is like thee in energy and prowess. That Brahmana thus addressed Arjuna, with a smiling face, repeatedly. But he succeeded not in moving Arjuna, firmly devoted to his purpose. The regenerate one, glad at heart, smilingly addressed Arjuna once more, saying, O slayer of foes, blessed be thou. I am Sakra, ask thou the boon thou desirest. Thus addressed, that perpetuator of the Kuru race, the heroic Dhananjaya bending his head and joining his hands, replied unto him of 1,000 eyes, saying, Even this is the object of my wishes, grant me this boon, illustrious one. I desire to learn from thee all the weapons. The chief of the celestials then, smiling, replied unto him cheerfully, saying, O Dhananjaya, when thou hast reached this region, what need is there of weapons? Thou hast already obtained a pure state of life. Ask thou for the regions of bliss that thou desirest. Thus addressed, Dhananjaya replied unto him of 1,000 eyes, saying, I desire not regions of bliss, nor objects of enjoyment, nor the state of a celestial. What is this talk about happiness? Chief of the celestials, I do not desire the prosperity of all the gods. Having left my brothers behind me in the forest, and without avenging myself on the foe, shall I incur the opprobrium for all ages of all the world? Thus addressed, the slayer of Vritra, worshipped of the worlds, consoling him with gentle words, spake unto the son of Pandu, saying, When thou art able to behold the three-eyed, trident-bearing Shiva, the Lord of all creatures, it is then, O child, that I will give thee all the celestial weapons. Therefore, strive thou to obtain the sight of the highest of the gods, for it is only after thou hast seen him, O son of Kunti, that thou wilt obtain all thy wishes. Having spoken thus unto Falguna, Sakra disappeared then and there, and Arjuna, devoting himself to asceticism, remained at that spot. Thus ends the 37th section in the Arjun Vigamna Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 38, Karata Parva. Janamejaya said, O illustrious one, I desire to hear in detail the history of the acquisition of weapons by Arjuna of spotless deeds. O tell me how that tiger among men, Dhananjaya, of mighty arms and possessed of great energy, entered that solitary forest without fear. And, O thou foremost of those acquainted with the Veda, what also did Arjuna do while dwelling there? How also were the illustrious Sthanu and the chief of the celestials gratified by him? O thou best of regenerate ones, I desire to hear all this under thy favor. Thou art omniscient, thou knowest all about the gods and all about men. O Brahmana, the battle that took place of old between Arjuna, that foremost of smiters never defeated in battle, and Bhav, was highly extraordinary and without parallel. It maketh one's hair stand on end to hear of it. Even the hearts of those lions among men, the brave sons of Pritha, trembled in consequence of wonder and joy and a sense of their own inferiority. O tell me in full what else Arjuna did. I do not see even the most trivial thing in Jishnu that is censurable. Therefore, recite to me in full the history of that hero. Vasampayana said, O tiger among Kurus, I shall recite to thee that narration, excellent and extensive and unrivaled, in connection with the illustrious hero. Sinless one, hear in detail the particulars about Arjuna's meeting with the three-eyed god of gods, and his contact with the illustrious god's person. At Yudhishthira's command, Dhananjaya of immeasurable prowess set out, from Kamyak, to obtain a sight of Sakra, the chief of the celestials, and of Sankara, the god of gods. And the strong-armed Arjuna of great might set out armed with his celestial bow and a sword with golden hilt, for the success of the object he had in view, northwards, towards the summit of the Himamvat. And, king, that first of all warriors in the three worlds, the son of Indra, with a calm mind, and firmly adhering to his purpose, then devoted himself, without the loss of any time, to ascetic austerities. And he entered, all alone, that terrible forest abounding with thorny plants and trees and flowers and fruits of various kinds, and inhabited by winged creatures of various species, and swarming with animals of divers kinds, and resorted to by siddhas and charanas. And when the son of Kunti entered that forest destitute of human beings, sounds of conchs and drums began to be heard in the heavens, and a thick shower of flowers fell upon the earth, and the clouds spreading over the firmament caused a thick shade. Passing over those difficult and woody regions at the foot of the great mountains, Arjuna soon reached the breast of the Himamvat, and staying there for some time began to shine in his brilliancy. And he beheld there numerous trees with expanding verdure, resounding with the melodious notes of winged warblers. And he saw there rivers with currents of the lapis lazuli, broken by the fierce eddies here and there, and echoing with the notes of swans and ducks and cranes. And the banks of those rivers resounded with the mellifluous strains of the male kokilas and the notes of peacocks and cranes. And the mighty warrior, beholding those rivers of sacred and pure and delicious water and their charming banks, became highly delighted. And the delighted Arjuna of fierce energy and high soul then devoted himself to rigid austerities in that delightful and woody region. Clad in rags made of grass and furnished with a black deerskin and a stick, he commenced to eat withered leaves fallen upon the ground. And he passed the first month by eating fruits at the interval of 3 nights, and the second by eating at the interval of the 6 nights, and the third by eating at the interval of a fortnight. When the 4th month came, that best of the Bharatas, the strong-armed son of Pandu, began to subsist on air alone. With arms upraised and leaning upon nothing and standing on the tips of his toes, he continued his austerities. And the illustrious hero's locks, in consequence of frequent bathing, took the hue of lightning or the lotus. Then all the great rishis went together unto the god of the Pinaka for representing unto him about the fierce asceticism of Pritha's son. And bowing unto that god of gods, they informed him of Arjuna's austerities, saying, "This son of Pritha, possessed of great energy, is engaged in the most difficult of ascetic austerities on the breast of the Himamvat. Heated with his asceticism, the earth is smoking all round, god of gods. We do not know what his object is for which he is engaged in these austerities. He, however, is causing us pain. It behoveth thee to prevent him." Hearing these words of those munis with souls under perfect control, the Lord of all creatures, the husband of Uma, said, "It behoveth you not to indulge in any grief on account of Falguna. Return ye all cheerfully and with alacrity to the places whence ye have come. I know the desire that is in Arjuna's heart. His wish is not for heaven, nor for prosperity, nor for long life. And I will accomplish, even this day, all that is desired by him." Vasampayana continued, "The truth-speaking rishis, having heard these words of Mahadev, became delighted, and returned to their respective abodes. Thus ends the 38th section in the Karata Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 39, Karata Parva continued. Vasampayana said, after all those illustrious ascetics had gone away, that wielder of the Pinaka and cleanser of all sins, the illustrious Hara, assuming the form of a Kireta resplendent as a golden tree, and with a huge and stalwart form like a second Meru, and taking up a handsome bow and a number of arrows resembling snakes of virulent poison, and looking like an embodiment of fire, came quickly down on the breast of Himamvat. And the handsome god of gods was accompanied by Uma in the guise of a Kireta woman, and also by a swarm of merry spirits of various forms and attire, and by thousands of women in the form and attire of Kiretas. And, king, that region suddenly blazed up in beauty, in consequence of the arrival of the god of gods in such company. And soon enough a solemn stillness pervaded the place. The sounds of springs, and watercourses, and of birds suddenly ceased. And as the god of gods approached Pritha's son of blameless deeds, he beheld a wonderful sight, even that of a Danva named Mukha, seeking, in the form of a boar, to slay Arjuna. Falguna, at the sight of the enemy seeking to slay him, took up the Gandiva and a number of arrows resembling snakes of virulent poison. And stringing his bow and filling the air with its twang, he addressed the boar and said, I have come here but done thee no injury. As thou seekest to slay me, I shall certainly send thee to the abode of Yam. And beholding that firm wielder of the bow, Falguna, about to slay the boar, Sankara in the guise of a Kireta suddenly bade him stop, saying, The boar like the mountain of Indrakila in hue hath been aimed at by me first. Falguna, however, disregarding these words, struck the boar. The Kireta, also of blazing splendor, let fly an arrow like flaming fire and resembling the thunderbolt at the same object. And the arrows thus shot by both fell at the same instant of time upon the wide body of Mukha, hard as adamant. And the two shafts fell upon the boar with a loud sound, even like that of Indra's thunderbolt and the thunder of the clouds falling together upon the breast of a mountain. And Mukha, thus struck by two shafts which produced numerous arrows resembling snakes of blazing mouths, yielded up his life, assuming once more his terrible Rakshasa form. Jishnu, that slayer of foes, then beheld before him that person, of form blazing as gold, and attired in the dress of a Kireta and accompanied by many women. And beholding him, the son of Kunti with a joyous heart addressed him smilingly and said, Who art thou that thus wanderest in these solitary woods, surrounded by women? O thou of the splendor of gold, art thou not afraid of this terrible forest? Why, again, didst thou shoot the boar that was first aimed at by me? This Rakshasa that came hither, listlessly or with the object of slaying me, had been first aimed at by me. Thou shalt not, therefore, escape from me with life. Thy behavior towards me is not consistent with the customs of the chase. Therefore, O mountaineer, I will take thy life. Thus addressed by the son of Pandu, the Kireta, smiling, replied unto him capable of wielding the bow with his left hand, in soft words, saying, O hero, thou needst not be anxious on my account. This forest land is proper abode for us who always dwell in the woods. Respecting thyself, however, I may inquire, why thou hast selected thy abode here amid such difficulties. We ascetics have our habitation in these woods abounding in animals of all kinds. Why dost thou, so delicate and brought up in luxury and possessed of the splendor of fire, dwell alone in such a solitary region? Arjuna said, depending on the Gandiva and arrows blazing like fire, I live in this great forest, like a second Pavki. Thou hast seen how this monster, this terrible Rakshasa that came hither in the form of an animal, hath been slain by me. The Kireta replied, This Rakshasa, first struck with the shafts shot from my bow, was killed and sent to the regions of Yam by me. He was first aimed at by me. And it is with my shot that he has been deprived of life. Proud of thy strength, it behoveth thee not to impute thy own fault to others. Thou art thyself in fault, wretch, and therefore shalt not escape from me with life. Stay thou. I will shoot at thee shafts like thunderbolts. Strive thou also and shoot, to the best of thy power, thy arrows at me. Hearing these words of the Kireta, Arjuna became angry, and attacked him with arrows. The Kireta, however, with a glad heart received all those shafts upon himself, repeatedly saying, Wretch, wretch, shoot thou thy best arrows capable of piercing into the very vitals. Thus addressed, Arjuna began to shower his arrows on him. Both of them then became angry and engaging in fierce conflict, began to shoot at each other showers of arrows, each resembling a snake of virulent poison. And Arjuna rained a perfect shower of arrows on the Kireta. Sankara, however, bore that downpour on him with a cheerful heart. But the wielder of the Pinaka, having borne that shower of arrows for a moment, stood unwounded, immovable like a hill. Dhananjaya, beholding his arrowy shower become futile, wondered exceedingly, repeatedly saying, "Excellent! Excellent! Alas, this mountaineer of delicate limbs, dwelling on the heights of the Himamvat, beareth without wavering the shafts shot from the Gandiva. Who is he? Is he Rudra himself, or some other god, or a Yaksh, or an Asura? The gods sometimes do descend on the heights of the Himamvat. Except the god who wieldeth the Pinaka, there is none else that can bear the impetuosity of the thousands of arrows shot by me from the Gandiva. Whether he is a god or a Yaksh, in fact, anybody except Rudra, I shall soon send him, with my shafts, to the regions of Yam." Thus thinking, Arjuna with a cheerful heart began, "O king, to shoot arrows by hundreds, resembling in splendor the rays of the sun. That downpour of shafts, however, the illustrious creator of the worlds, the wielder of the trident, bore with a glad heart, like a mountain bearing a shower of rocks." Soon, however, the arrows of Falguna were exhausted. And noticing this fact, Arjuna became greatly alarmed. And the son of Pand then began to think of the illustrious god Agni, who had before, during the burning of the Kandava, given him a couple of inexhaustible quivers. And he began to think, "Alas, my arrows are all exhausted. What shall I shoot now from my bow? Who is this person that swalloweth my arrows? Slaying him with the end of my bow, as elephants are killed with lances, I shall send him to the domains of the make-bearing Yam." The illustrious Arjuna then, taking up his bow and dragging the Kireta with his bowstring, struck him some fierce blows that descended like thunderbolts. When, however, that slayer of hostile heroes, the son of Kunti, commenced the conflict with the end of the bow, the mountaineer snatched from his hands that celestial bow, and beholding his bow snatched from him, Arjuna took up his sword, and wishing to end the conflict, rushed at his foe. And then the Kuru prince, with the whole might of his arms, struck that sharp weapon upon the head of the Kireta, a weapon that was incapable of being resisted even by solid rocks. But that first of swords, at touch of the Kireta's crown, broke into pieces. Falguna then commenced the conflict with trees and stones. The illustrious god, in the form of the huge-bodied Kireta, however, bore that shower of trees and rocks with patience. The mighty son of Pritha then, his mouth smoking with wrath, struck the invincible god in the form of a Kireta, with his clenched fists, blows that descended like thunderbolts. The god in the Kireta form returned Falguna's blows with fierce blows resembling the thunderbolts of Indra. And in consequence of that conflict of blows between the son of Pandu and the Kireta, there arose in that place loud and frightful sounds. That terrible conflict of blows, resembling the conflict of yore between Vritra and Vaswa, lasted but for a moment. The mighty Jishnu, clasping the Kireta, began to press him with his breast, but the Kireta, possessed of great strength, pressed the insensible son of Pandu with force. And in consequence of the pressure of their arms and of their breasts, their bodies began to emit smoke like charcoal in fire. The great god then, smiting the already smitten son of Pandu, and attacking him in anger with his full might, deprived him of his senses. Then, Bharata, Falguna, thus pressed by the god of the gods, with limbs besides bruised and mangled, became incapable of motion and was almost reduced to a ball of flesh. And struck by the illustrious god, he became breathless and falling down on earth without power of moving, looked like one that was dead. Soon, however, he regained consciousness, and rising from his prostrate position with body covered with blood, became filled with grief. Mentally prostrating himself before the gracious God of gods, and making a clay image of that deity, he worshipped it with offerings of floral garlands. Beholding, however, the garland that he had offered to the clay image of Bhav, decking the crown of the Kireta, that best of Pandu's sons became filled with joy and regained his ease. And he prostrated himself thereupon at the feet of Bhav, and the god also was pleased with him. And Hara, beholding the wonder of Arjuna and seeing that his body had been emaciated with ascetic austerities, spake unto him in a voice deep as the roaring of the clouds, saying, O Falguna, I have been pleased with thee, for thy act is without a parallel. There is no Kshatriya who is equal to thee in courage and patience. And, sinless one, thy strength and prowess are almost equal to mine. O mighty armed one, I have been pleased with thee. Behold me, bull of the Bharata race. O large-eyed one, I will grant thee eyes to see me in my true form. Thou wert a rishi before. Thou wilt vanquish all thy foes, even the dwellers of heaven. I will, as I have been pleased with thee, grant thee an irresistible weapon. Soon shalt thou be able to wield that weapon of mine. Vasampayana continued, Falguna then beheld him, Mahadev, that god of blazing splendor, that wielder of the Pinaka, that one who had his abode on the mountains of Kailas accompanied by Uma. Bending down on his knee and bowing with his head, that conqueror of hostile cities, the son of Pritha, worshipped Hara and inclined him to grace. And Arjuna said, O Kapadin, chief of all gods, destroyer of the eyes of Bhaga, O god of gods, O Mahadev, thou of blue throat, O thou of matted locks, I know thee as the cause of all causes, O thou of 3 eyes, Lord of all. Thou art the refuge of all the gods. This universe hath sprung from thee. Thou art incapable of being vanquished by the 3 worlds of the celestials, the asuras, and men. Thou art Shiva in the form of Vishnu, and Vishnu in the form of Shiva. Thou destroyedst of old the great sacrifice of Daksha. Hari, O Rudra, I bow to thee. Thou hast an eye on thy forehead. O serve, O thou that reignest objects of desire, bearer of the trident, O wielder of the Pinaka, O Surya, O thou of pure body, O creator of all, I bow to thee. O Lord of all created things, I worship thee to obtain thy grace. Thou art the Lord of the Ganas, the source of universal blessing, the cause of the causes of the universe. Thou art beyond the foremost of male beings, thou art the highest, thou art the subtlest, O Hara. O illustrious Sankara, it behoveth thee to pardon my fault. It was even to obtain a sight of thyself that I came to this great mountain, which is dear to thee and which is the excellent abode of ascetics. Thou art worshipped of all worlds, Lord. I worship thee to obtain thy grace. Let not this rashness of mine be regarded as a fault, this combat in which I was engaged with thee from ignorance. O Sankara, I seek thy protection. Pardon me all I have done. Vasampayana continued, endued with great might, the god whose sign was the bull, taking into his the handsome hands of Arjuna, smilingly replied unto him, saying, I have pardoned thee. And the illustrious Hara, cheerfully clasping Arjuna with his arms, once more consoling Arjuna, said as follows. Thus ends the 39th section in the Bharata Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 40, Vana Parva continued. Mahadev said, "Thou wert in thy former life Nara, the friend of Narayana. Inwardly wert thou engaged in fierce ascetic austerities for several thousands of years. In thee as well as in Vishnu, that first of male beings, dwelleth great might. Ye both, by your might, hold the universe, O Lord, taking up that fierce bow, whose twine resembled the deep roar of the clouds. Thou, as well as Krishna, chastisedst the Danvas during the coronation of Indra. Even this Gandiva is that bow, O son of Pritha, fit for thy hands. O foremost of male beings, I snatched it from thee, helped by my powers of illusion. This couple of quivers, fit for thee, will again be inexhaustible, son of Pritha. And, son of the Kuru race, thy body will be free from pain and disease. Thy prowess is incapable of being baffled. I have been pleased with thee. And, O first of male beings, ask thou of me the boon that thou desirest. O chastiser of all foes, giver of proper respect to those deserving it, not even in heaven is there any male being who is equal to thee, nor any kshatriya who is thy superior." Arjuna said, "O illustrious God, having the bull for thy sign, if thou wilt grant me my desire, I ask of thee, O Lord, that fierce celestial weapon wielded by thee and called Brahmasira, that weapon of terrible prowess which destroyeth at the end of the Yuga the entire universe, that weapon by the help of which, God of gods, I may under thy grace, obtain victory in the terrible conflict which shall take place between myself on one side, and Karna and Bhishma and Kripa and Drona on the other. That weapon by which I may consume in battle Danvas and Rakshasas and evil spirits and Pisachas and Gandharvas and Nagas. That weapon which when hurled with mantras produceth darts by thousands and fierce-looking missiles and arrows like snakes of virulent poison, and by means of which I may fight with Bhishma and Drona and Kripa and Karna of ever abusive tongue. Illustrious destroyer of the eyes of Bhaga, even this is my foremost desire, viz. that I may be able to fight with them and obtain success." Bhav replied, "O powerful one, I will give thee that favorite weapon of mine called the Pasupata. O son of Pandu, thou art capable of holding, hurling, and withdrawing it. Neither the chief himself of the gods, nor Yam, nor the king of the Yakshas, nor Varuna, nor Vayu, knoweth it. How could men know anything of it? But, son of Pritha, this weapon should not be hurled without adequate cause, for if hurled at any foe of little might it may destroy the whole universe. In the three worlds with all their mobile and immobile creatures, there is none who is incapable of being slain by this weapon. And it may be hurled by the mind, by the eye, by words, and by the bow." Vasampayana continued, "Hearing these words, the son of Pritha purified himself. And approaching the Lord of the universe, with rapt attention, he said, 'Instruct me.' Mahadev then imparted unto that best of Pandu's son the knowledge of that weapon looking like the embodiment of Yam, together with all the mysteries about hurling and withdrawing it. And that weapon thence began to wait upon Arjuna as it did upon Sankara, the lord of Uma. And Arjuna also gladly accepted it. And at the moment the whole earth, with its mountains and woods and trees and seas and forests and villages and towns and mines, trembled. And the sounds of gongs and drums and trumpets by thousands began to be heard. And at that moment, hurricanes and whirlwinds began to blow. And the gods and the Danvas beheld that terrible weapon in its embodied form stay by the side of Arjuna of immeasurable energy. And whatever of evil there had been in the body of Falguna of immeasurable energy was all dispelled by the touch of the three-eyed deity. And the three-eyed god then commanded Arjuna, saying, "Go thou into heaven." Arjuna then, king, worshipping the god with bent head and gazed at him with joined hands. Then the Lord of all the dwellers of heaven, the deity of blazing splendor having his abode on mountain breasts, the husband of Uma, the god of passions under complete control, the source of all blessings, Bhav, gave unto Arjuna, that foremost of men, the great bow called Gandiva, destructive of Danvas and Pisachas, and the god of gods, then leaving that blessed mountain with snowy plateaus and wells and caves, favorite resort of sky-ranging great rishis, went up, accompanied by Uma into the skies, in the sight of that foremost of men. Thus ends the 40th section in the Karata Parva of the Vana Parva. Section 41, Karata Parva continued. Vasampayana said, the wielder of the Pinaka, having the bull for his sign, thus disappeared in the very sight of the gazing son of Pandu, like the sun setting in the sight of the world. Arjuna, that slayer of hostile heroes, wondered much at this, saying, "Oh, I have seen the great God of gods. Fortunate, indeed I am and much favored, for I have both beheld and touched with my hand the three-eyed Hara, the wielder of the Pinaka, in his boon-giving form. I shall win success. I am already great. My enemies have already been vanquished by me. My purposes have been already achieved." And while the son of Pritha, endued with immeasurable energy, was thinking thus, there came to that place Varuna the god of waters, handsome and of the splendor of the lapis lazuli, accompanied by all kinds of aquatic creatures, and filling all the points of the horizon with a blazing effulgence, and accompanied by rivers both male and female, and Nagas, and Daityas, and Sadhyas and inferior deities, Varuna, the controller and lord of all aquatic creatures, arrived at that spot. There came also the Lord Kuvara of body resembling pure gold, seated on his car of great splendor, and accompanied by numerous yakshas. And the Lord of treasures, possessed of great beauty, came there to see Arjuna, illuminating the firmament with his effulgence. And there came also Yam himself, of great beauty, the powerful destroyer of all the worlds, accompanied by those lords of the creation, the Pitris both embodied and disembodied. And the god of justice, of inconceivable soul, the son of Surya, the destroyer of all creatures, with the make in hand, came there on his car, illuminating the three worlds with the regions of the Guhayakas, the Gandharvas and the Nagas, like a second Surya as he riseth at the end of the Yuga. Having arrived there, they beheld, from the effulgent and variegated summits of the great mountain, Arjuna engaged in ascetic austerities. And there came in a moment the illustrious Sakra also, accompanied by his queen, seated on the back of the celestial elephant, Airavata, and surrounded also by all the deities. And in consequence of the white umbrella being held over his head, he looked like the moon amid fleecy clouds. And eulogized by Gandharvas and Rishis endued with wealth of asceticism, the chief of the celestials alighted on a particular summit of the mountain, like a second sun. Then Yam, possessed of great intelligence and fully conversant with virtue, who had occupied a summit on the south, in a voice deep as that of the clouds, said these auspicious words, "Arjuna, behold us, the protectors of the worlds, arrive here. We will grant thee spiritual vision, for thou deservest to behold us. Thou wert in thy former life a rishi of immeasurable soul, known as Nara of great might. At the command, O child of Brahma, thou hast been born among men. O sinless one, by thee shall be vanquished in battle the highly virtuous grandsire of the Kurus, Bhishma of great energy, who is born of the Vasis. Thou shalt also defeat all the Kshatriyas of fiery energy, commanded by the son of Bharadwaja in battle. Thou shalt also defeat those Danvas of fierce prowess that have been born amongst men, and those Danvas also that are called Nivakavachas. And, O son of the Kuru race, O Dhananjaya, thou shalt also slay Karna of fierce prowess, who is even a portion of my father Surya, of energy celebrated throughout the worlds. And, O son of Kunti, smiter of all foes, thou shalt also slay all the portions of celestials and Danvas and the Rakshasas that have been incarnate on earth. And slain by thee, these shall attain to the regions earned by them according to their acts. And, O Falguna, the fame of thy achievements will last forever in the world. Thou hast gratified Mahadev himself in conflict. Thou shalt, with Vishnu himself, lighten the burden of the earth. O accept this weapon of mine, the make I wield, incapable of being baffled by anybody. With this weapon thou wilt achieve great deeds. Vasampayana continued, O Janamejaya, the son of Pritha then received from Yam that weapon duly, along with the mantras and rites and the mysteries of hurling and withdrawing it. Then Varuna, the lord of all aquatic creatures, blue as the clouds, from a summit he had occupied on the west, uttered these words, O son of Pritha, thou art the foremost of Kshatriyas, and engaged in Kshatriya practices. O thou of large coppery eyes, behold me. I am Varuna, the lord of waters. Hurled by me, my nooses are incapable of being resisted. O son of Kunti, accept of me these Varuna weapons along with the mysteries of hurling and withdrawing them. With these, O hero, in the battle that ensued of your own account of Tharaka, the wife of Vrihaspati, thousands of mighty Daityas were seized and tied. Accept them of me. Even if Yam himself be thy foe, with these in thy hands, he will not be able to escape from thee. When thou wilt armed with these, range over the field of battle, the land, beyond doubt, will be destitute of Kshatriyas. Vasampayana continued, after both Varuna and Yam had given away their celestial weapons, the Lord of Treasures having his home on the heights of Kailas, then spake, O son of Pandu, O thou of great might and wisdom, I too have been pleased with thee. And this meeting with thee giveth me as much pleasure as a meeting with Krishna. O wielder of the bow with the left hand, O thou of mighty arms, thou wert a god before, eternal as other gods. In ancient kalpas, thou hadst every day gone through ascetic austerities along with us. O best of men, I grant thee celestial vision. O thou of mighty arms, thou wilt defeat even invincible Daityas and Danvas. Accept of me also, without loss of time, an excellent weapon. With this thou wilt be able to consume the ranks of Dhritarashtra. Take then this favorite weapon of mine called Antaradhana. Endued with energy and prowess and splendor, it is capable of sending the foe to sleep. When the illustrious Sankara slew Tripura, even this was the weapon which he shot and by which many mighty asuras were consumed. O thou of invincible prowess, I take it up for giving it to thee. Endued with the dignity of the Meru, thou art competent to hold this weapon. After these words had been spoken, the Kuru prince Arjuna, endued with great strength, duly received from Kuvara that celestial weapon. Then the chief of the celestials, addressing Pritha's son of ceaseless deeds in sweet words, said, in a voice deep as that of the clouds or the kettle drum, O thou mighty armed son of Kunti, Thou art an ancient god. Thou hast already achieved the highest success, and acquired the status of a god. But, O repressor of foes, thou hast yet to accomplish the purposes of the gods. Thou must ascend to heaven. Therefore prepare thou, O hero of great splendor. My own car with Matali as charioteer will soon descend on the earth. Taking thee, O Kaurava, to heaven, I will grant thee there all my celestial weapons. Beholding those protectors of the worlds assembled together on the heights of Himamvat, Dhananjaya, the son of Kunti, wondered much. Endued with great energy, he then duly worshipped the assembled Lokpalas, with words, water, and fruits. The celestials then returning that worship went away. And the gods capable of going everywhere at will, and endued with the speed of the mind, returned to the places whence they had come. That bull among men, Arjuna, having obtained weapons thus, was filled with pleasure, and he regarded himself as one whose desires had been fulfilled and who was crowned with success. Thus ends the 41st section in the Karata Parva of the Vana Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.